In this video, we're going to be troubleshooting this Troy-Bilt lawnmower with a Honda engine that I got from a yard sale last week for cheap. The person that I got this from probably didn't know how to fix it, so they decided to let it sit for a long time and then sell it to me at a yard sale sometime later. We're going to see exactly what happened to this thing coming up next. All right, so the first thing I usually do when I get a mower of unknown origin, I'll take the gas cap off and smell the gas. If it's got that rotten gas smell, then I know it's been sitting for a long time. I also like to check the air filter, see if it's soaked with gas, soaked with oil, anything like that. This one was soaked with roaches, no kidding. So I took that and threw it as far as I could and kind of cleaned it up already. I didn't want roaches in my garage, but it was in there. All right, so I got that rotten gas smell, so I'm gonna take the bowl off of here and take a look. And yep, sure is evidence that it's been sitting for a long time. Now I know that it was hard to pull, all right? So when I pulled the thing, it was hard to pull. It's like it had a lot of compression, but it's not supposed to have that much compression. So I already knew there was something going on in the valves. So we're gonna take the valve cover off and look in there and see what's going on. All right, so to get this valve cover off and make things a little bit easier on yourself, I would take off the top cover. It's just these 3 bolts right here. And I would also take off this muffler shroud. It's just these 3 bolts on the side right here. It makes it a lot easier and it gives you more room. I would also take out the spark plug because we're gonna need that out here momentarily. Now, if I haven't said so already, all of these bolt heads are 10 millimeter. So let's go ahead and get this off of here. Now, I've already gone ahead and taken the valve cover off and broken the seal loose. What you need to do is kind of get your tool in there and kind of pry gently around the valve cover, all right? You can even use a heat gun around this if you want to, but be careful not to melt the carburetor, shroud right here. Just kind of go around the seal right there and get that real nice and hot without melting any of that plastic, and that'll help break that loose. But if you don't have a heat gun, just gently use the tools like I showed you a minute ago and some patience until you work around it and get it loose. Be careful not to bend the valve cover. If you do, I'll post the current price right here at the time of this video for a new valve cover. It's probably not very expensive. So just these 4 bolts, and we got it off of there. Now there's a couple of things that can happen to these Honda motors. One of the most common things is the valve will stick, probably on the exhaust side, and when the cam comes around to open the valve, it can't open the valve, so it'll crack the rocker arm. So that's another video. That's not actually what's wrong with this one. You can test that easily by just pressing on the valves like so. What's actually going on with this one is the compression relief that's on the cam has given up the ghost, and I'll show you how that works right now. All right, so let me show you how this compression relief works. Now, as you can see right here, we've got a metal part that's flat with the cam. It's not doing anything. When the engine is idle, it's supposed to look like that. That way, when you spin the engine around, it'll bump the exhaust valve open a little bit and give you a little bit of compression relief. It's not doing that. As the engine speeds up, the centrifugal force is supposed to pull that out, make that flat again, and then you get your compression back. Well, right now, it's supposed to spring back and forth by itself like this, but it's not working. So the solution is to replace the cam gear. Luckily, it's not a very expensive problem. Okay, so to get this cam gear out, we need to be at top dead center on the compression stroke. Now here is top dead center on the not compression stroke. See, the valves are moving up and down. But if you spin the engine around until that lobe, there's actually a little dot on top of the lobe that may not be showing up on the camera. And you can also look under the motor and see the alignment marks. All right, since this is a lawnmower, I can't get a camera under here, but if this was a pressure washer, you'd see it a lot better. See, if you notice, there's a mark right there. See that one right there? I got an arrow pointing to it. And then here's the other one. Those 2 alignment marks need to be perfectly parallel with the top of the head right there. Then you know you're perfectly at top dead center where we're supposed to be. And here's a shot of the new cam gear where you can see those marks a lot more clearly. So now that we're aligned properly, let's go ahead and get the rocker arms off. Just push up on the pin, pull the pin out, and set that aside. You can't mix these up because they just won't fit. Do the same thing to the other one. Now let's go ahead and get our pin started. Just put a little screwdriver and lightly tap on the top of the pin. See it coming out of the bottom there? And if you notice, the flat part of the pin is facing the top of the head. If you're wondering what in the world holds that from falling out of there, there's a little tab on the bottom of the valve cover that sticks into that notch right there, just like this, and that holds that together so that that doesn't come out while the engine's running. So just grab some pliers and go ahead and pull that pin out the rest of the way. Just like that. Now, if you're working with a lawnmower, make sure that the handle at the top is disengaged so that the engine brake is on. You don't want the engine to turn. If you're working on a pressure washer or something like that, just make sure and not bump the engine, otherwise you're going to be out of alignment there. I mean, you can stick a screwdriver in the top of the head and get it set back to top dead center, but if you don't let it move, you don't have to do that. So just go ahead and take the belt, work it over the top right there, and voila! That's all there is to it. Very simple. And here's our new gear. Springing back like it's supposed to. Just work it in there the same way, with the lobe facing the top of the piston like you had it before. And there's that little dot that I was talking about right there. Just work that puppy in there slow. Now that's facing perfectly to the top of the head. If I was one tooth off, it would be facing slightly off to the side. So make sure and monitor that. It is critical to get it exactly right. Facing perfectly to the top, just like so. Go ahead and put our pin back. Remember, the flat part of the pin goes up towards the top. And that's it. It's back in there. All right, let's get our rocker arms back. Remember, you can't get these backwards. It only fits one way. Now, I do recommend putting a little drop of oil on everything, just so we don't start up an engine on a dry camshaft, and then go ahead and give everything a spin, put a little drop of oil. Just don't like to start an engine like that. Let's go ahead and set it back to top dead center and check our valves. Muffler side, exhaust valve, carburetor side, intake valve. The exhaust valve should be 8/1000ths, and the intake valve should be 6/1000ths. So here's our 8/1000ths. Pretty loose, right? And then 6/1000ths on the other one. It's not too bad, but it could use tightening a little bit. So let's use a 9mm wrench right here to bust that loose. Put our 8/1000ths in there. Pretty good right there. Just a little bit of drag is what we're looking for. And tighten it back up. That's just about right. Just a little bit of drag right there. And I'll do the same thing on the intake side with the 6/1000ths. And then let's put the valve cover back on. All right, so we need to get all this old sealant off of here right here. The valve cover you can pretty much clean up with anything, a wire brush. It doesn't really matter because you can get rid of any debris. But on this, you have to be careful not to get all this stuff in the engine. So I usually just take a razor blade and kind of carefully angle it away from the engine like that. And it's going to take a little bit of patience. Okay, so I got both surfaces cleaned up. I'll tell you what worked really well to keep stuff out of the motor is if you take a rag and kind of push it in the little cracks and crevices with a little screwdriver, just like so. That worked really well, kept everything out. And then just take a steel wool and spray it with a little bit of brake clean or carburetor cleaner or something like that to get it wet. And then just go around like so. Scrub it real good. And that did take off a lot of that residue. And then when you pull that off, everything is real clean, okay? All right, so I've got the front of the mower jacked up a little bit to drive the oil back into the oil pan. You want to make sure that all of your surfaces are nice and clean and they don't have any oil on them. I'm using this stuff right here called the Right Stuff. and you can just put a pretty good coating of that all the way around the valve cover. Make sure you've got all the little areas, and then go ahead and put this on here. Now that stuff has a 90-minute ready to service time, so I'm going to go ahead and let it sit. I'll put the rest of the motor back together, and then we'll be back for a test. All right, so let's see what this thing's going to do. It runs absolutely perfect. Hope this video was helpful. Thanks for watching.